Stay tried really hard to be interesting, but unfortunately it just completely fell flat. And there's a character who really annoyed me as well, and I'm not sure why they annoyed me, but there was just something about them that rubbed me up the wrong way. This film was released in 2005, directed by Marc Forster, written by David Benioff, and stars Ewan McGregor, Naomi Watts, and Ryan Gosling. And I will say the acting is brilliant. The performances, particularly from McGregor and Gosling, are brilliant, at times even captivating. When the narrative is interesting, there are moments, their performances are really brilliant. But I feel like the ending, and I'm not about to discuss the ending, don't worry, but it was building up to something. And I thought, I don't know where this is going. And I will say credit where it's due. It wasn't obvious where it was going, and I liked that. I liked that it wasn't predictable. But once it got there, I feel like it tried hard and it didn't deliver properly. The use of time and cutting back and forth between present day and the past was done really sloppily. And throughout the film, I feel like it didn't work. And there's one thing that doesn't make any sense to me, and I will discuss what I mean by that with a spoiler warning because I'll have to go into some detail. But the film revolves around a psychiatrist, played by Ewan McGregor, who is trying to help a young man called Henry who is starting to hear voices. He's in a very unstable state of mind, and he says that he's going to take his own life. I think it was midnight on Saturday, if I remember correctly, and it's a race against time to see if the psychiatrist can help him and then find him as time approaches. Will he take his own life, and what is going on? What is his mental state? Part of me thought the narrative was really fascinating, and part of me thought it was really boring because for 90% of the film, nothing happens. And there are a couple of moments where I thought, okay, I don't know what you're doing with that. That's interesting. But generally, it was boring. And it was suspenseful, by which I mean it was atmospheric. But if I try and tell you my three favourite points throughout the narrative, I can't, because there aren't any. I just felt like the whole thing was just one giant goose chase, and they could have cut out over half of this film and we wouldn't have lost anything. We wouldn't have lost half of the mystery or anything, and we still would have got to the same destination without losing anything. So the pacing isn't great, but as I said, there were some moments, a few moments, where I thought, that was unexpected, that was mysterious, I don't know what they're doing with that. So it's not completely terrible, but I feel like the entire thing was just a slow, uneventful build-up. And I guess that's the whole point. For me, why it didn't work is because I was just waiting for the end. I was just trying to get to the end, hoping that the end would be this amazing thing, whether it would be shocking or surprising or a twist or whatever it was. I felt like the whole film existed just to give us the ending. And it definitely was all about the destination. The journey was pretty deplorable. It wasn't very good. The only thing that kept it going, well, there were two things. One are the performances. There were some really good performances. And two, we get a character introduced who is not meant to be there. I can't really say anything else about that, but a character who isn't there, or potentially who isn't there, but we can see them. So how are they there? Who is it? What's their involvement? I can't say any more than that without spoiling it. But actually, I don't know if I recommend it because I think it tried to be clever, but the destination was not worth the boring journey. Okay, so I guess big spoilers from now. I'm going to discuss what happens at the end and why I also think it didn't work. They tried to make it interesting and unfortunately it just wasn't. So at the end of the film, big spoilers, it turns out it was all a dream, which in itself is quite interesting. I mean, it's not so much a dream, it's more that Henry was lying on the floor dying because he felt like he'd caused this horrific accident, but we know it wasn't his fault. We learned that actually his tire just blew out, wasn't his fault. But in his final moments of living, he has this guilt, and apparently, now I had to go onto Wikipedia to get the rest of this information because it wasn't clear enough in the film. But he went into this like state of mind where he spends the entirety of his last few minutes playing out this entire film, and people who are around him at the crash play these different roles. But then why would he be playing it, well, imagining it all from the perspective of Sam? Why would he be the star of this dream? He absolutely wouldn't be. That wouldn't make any sense. And why would his mind create this elaborate backstory for Lila? It absolutely wouldn't. None of this would happen. Yes, I can imagine the whole trauma and the guilt of it causing his mind to create these different scenarios, but not with these people in these different perspectives. Why would the blind character, whose name I can't remember, why would he be his father? What would that have to do with anything? It just didn't make any sense, and they tried to be really clever and say, oh, everything you've just seen was a dream, or in his subconscious, and all of the characters are actually people who are gathered around him at the crash site, helping to save him, and he's concocted this imaginary world. Yeah, but the world you've created doesn't make sense. That's not what would happen. I firmly believe that there is no way he'd imagine this a narrative from the perspective of the person who's trying to save his life. He wouldn't come up with this elaborate backstory for how Sam had saved Lila and what that was about, and why the blind guy would take the role of his father. I don't get that, and it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. It's an interesting concept. So if they'd gone to the effort to make 90% of the film on reflection then make sense, I'd get it. But it didn't make any sense. The only thing that I did like, and I think was done well, is that when we see him lying on the floor at the crash site, he hears things, such as a little boy asking his mother, is this man going to die? And then throughout the film, we actually heard that several times. So I like that. The words he's hearing in real life are permeating into this mental state. So that I thought was pretty good. But again, why would we be seeing the psychiatrist experiencing these things? Why would the psychiatrist care about the kid with the balloon over and over again? Why would we be experiencing this from his perspective? The whole film should have been told from Henry's perspective. It should have been what he was going through in those final moments in his subconscious. And then I might have bought into it. And then I might have thought, yeah, this is him taking the images from around him in his final moments and turning them into something else. And I would have bought that. That would have made sense. So they tried. They tried to make it something complex and mind-blowing and twisty. But honestly, it was a poorly executed idea. That could have been great, but the film really let itself down. I just realised I forgot to mention which character irritated me. It was Lila. She's absolutely pointless. She served no purpose. Nothing wrong with the performance, absolutely not. But the character was pointless, and then, like, right towards the end, she suddenly realised something and was about to rush to try and find Sam, and then nothing came of that, and it was just absolutely boring, and she was such a poorly developed, poorly written character who was very boring, very bland. Really didn't like her. It's almost like she was there to pad out Sam's real world. But again, had they told things from Henry's perspective and showed us these, so-called hallucinations that Henry was having, that would have made so much more sense. And everything would have actually, you could then look back and go, ah, yes, I can connect those dots. Now I know it wasn't real. But it doesn't make any sense. And unfortunately, from a narrative perspective, it's terrible. And Lila as a character is so dull and so boring that I just wish she wasn't in it. That's all I have to say now. I don't think I've forgotten anything else. It's a brilliant idea, but terribly, terribly executed.